we asked the coaches, just to dive right in here, we asked the coaches to send us their top, essentially 3 to 5 things. Top 3 to 5 things. I'm going to turn a little bit more here even. I think this will be a little bit better. That they felt that would have been most important for them to know when they started trading. And it went very, very well. And we know that because you guys told us, hey, give us some more of that. So that's what we're going to do today. And I chose the top 3 out of the whole list of the top 5. Now, maybe some of these could be argued, but essentially this is the top 3 of all of them. So let's go ahead and just do some groundwork here. Okay. I mentioned we went over a lot of material. Okay. So if you didn't see it, now I'm going to put a caveat in here because I know these topicals are only available for a certain amount of time. So if I'm wrong, somebody in the back there can pop that in the chat. If it is rewatchable, I highly advise you rewatch. If it's not still available, because I know these are only available for a certain amount of time, then that would just be my exhortation to you to make sure that anytime you can join these that you do, okay? Because we do go over some really important information and, it's not available forever. So we're going to talk more about that as well as we move through this topical, because we've got some things for you in this one that's not going to be available in perpetuity. It's not always going to be there, right? There are some time sensitive things. We're always big about that here at TRADEway. It's a big part of trading that we are able to be decisive and take action. So that is a part of this as well. If you can rewatch that, actually, I just got to do one quick thing. I'm going to minimize some of my Zoom controls. And okay, there we go. So what are we trying to do today? Okay. I mentioned focus in on a few keys, okay, as opposed to an overview. So I want to go a little bit deeper, right? We'll be watching for questions there in the back as well. I always say on all the webinars I do anyway, I know this is something that the other coaches appreciate. You actually have an opportunity to ask questions. This is a direct access time. Now, we don't have a ton of time on this particular topical for Q&A, but there's always some, and there's people in the back helping. So if you have questions about anything we talk about, any comments we make, some of the things that we're going to offer for you guys, please make sure you put that in the chat, because it's a lot faster, a lot easier to ask us right here, right now when we're with you. And you might as well get your questions answered, right? You might as well get that in place sooner than later. Second one here, look more practically, not just a more narrow look, but more practically on these 3. Remember, we're talking about major points that coaches wish they knew when they started trading. So the goal is for you to, yes, hear what they are, a little bit of thoughts from Ross and I, but also, well, what do we do with that now? And we hit on that last time, but like I said, we didn't necessarily go as deep into that based on the breadth and time and all those kinds of things. So first thing, like I said, I want to lay this expectation, and Ross put this in the presentation last time. And as I was reviewing that, I thought, you know what, this is good to go over again for this webinar, for the last webinar. And as I say here in the note, any trading webinar, right? This is any trading. Screenshot this if you want, okay? Ask yourself, now, halfway point. You say, I can't do it halfway point. You're going to be talking. That makes sense. Take a screenshot, ask yourself now, ask yourself after. But main point here, this is a good question to ask, right? As I was going through this list, I'm going to show you in just a second, I had to think to myself, and this is honest, what are these questions do I need to be asking myself, right? I would put a side note in here. You could ask yourself these questions when you're learning literally anything, when you're trying to grow in literally any area, but sticking to the task at hand. Ask yourself during this webinar. Okay. I'm going to go really fast through these just for time's sake. I think you guys get the point, but I want you to have them. Okay. Thinking about a personal situation where one or any of the keys we talk about today, any of the points we talk about, any of the notes or the additions we make to this material, as Ross and I are just talking, where would that have helped you, right? Why? Because it helps identify why it would matter to you. That's important. Connect it to yourself, create that energy for transformation or energy for change by connecting it to a circumstance that you might have got a better outcome, a different outcome, right? Let's keep on moving. Have I heard any of these before? What did I do last time? What did I do the other time? I heard them. So even if you've heard it, how has that helped you, right? Let that motivate you to add these things to your trading behavior process. Okay. If I have heard them, what did I do? Right? I just said that. What did that do for me? If I have not, do I now see putting action in place can help me, right? In bold in my trading moving forward. So I added a note here just so that we can think this through. Like I said, I know I'm going quickly through these. You can take a screenshot. I'll give a second here once I get them all visible. But identify not only how it can help me, but what or how, should be a little slash in there, how the positive results of that change could impact you in a meaningful way. In other words, I'm not just thinking through process here. I'm thinking through product. What is the product of the process? Sometimes we don't have power for the process because we have not spent enough time dreaming, envisioning the product that the process can create for us, right? If the process feels boring, less engaging, maybe not boring, but less engaging, whatever it is, we need to create energy for the process by envisioning the product, right? There's power for the process when I envision the product. In other words, how can this help me? What would that do? I'm going to give you some examples as we get further down, okay? Make it very personal. And this is the full screen for those of you that want to take a screenshot, okay? What action steps will I take? Or if you want, go ahead, cross the S right out of there, right? What action step will I take after this topical workshop? If you're like me, man, you might just go, I'm going to do 15 new things, or, I'm going to do 3 new things every day. And a lot of that can fall by the wayside. Really, one new thing. This is why Jordan Peterson is big on telling people, anybody, any stage of life, clean your room. You want to change the world? Clean your room. And he's not trying to be paternal. He's saying if you can take one simple thing and you can execute it consistently, it's not meant to be something that's hard to do. What's hard to do is executing it consistently. Once you do that, you're getting yourself on a mental track to be able to master a lot of other things that might be bigger, but we got to start in an area that's manageable. All right. Now, when I have my screen share up here on Keynote, Ross, I don't see chat, okay? Just FYI. So please feel free to cut in at any point, speak over me, stop me. I have no issues with that, just to make sure. If you have any comments or if there's something going on in chat that I need to be aware of, please go ahead and cut me off.
Chat's going good right now. Guys, I'm glad Blair brought this back, because we're going deeper into something that we kind of did an overview in the first webinar. I think this is a really important slide though. And there's a reason why I put these comments in the original presentation, and they're just as powerful as today. Remember that when Blair and I did the first webinar, this was talking to 5 different coaches or speakers or trainers and saying, what would you like to have known when you first started trading, or what would you have liked to have put into practice earlier in your trading career? We were learning from their experience. We were learning from the things that worked really well And to be quite honest and transparent, we were also learning from those things that took a while for them to truly learn and experience. And they wish they had done it better or faster or earlier, or really appreciated the wisdom of what experience can show us. So when you look at these elements, it is not, and we mentioned this in the first webinar, Blair, it's not uncommon. We don't expect to show you things that you haven't heard before. But I think it's very important for you to really bring them up and ask these questions that Blair has on the screen as to how they can really impact you. So when you look at that first one, the coaches brought this forward in thinking about, yes, there have been many trading situations where they wish that they had applied these skill sets or these knowledge pieces earlier, and now they've really grown and learned to appreciate them. So if you're pretty new in your trading, we're trying to compress your learning. We're trying to take the things that we've learned, and these 3 that are the most common that came from 5 different trainers or coaches or traders who did not talk about their answers. They came in completely independently, and there was this overwhelming theme that came from these top 3. We're trying to help you understand your journey in a way that can compress and accelerate your time to improving your trading and becoming more successful, and maybe minimizing some of those bumps in the road. I really like the second one. Have you heard any of these before? Most likely, if you've been around with TRADEway for any period of time, the question would be yes. And so when you see on the screen that Blair has there, if yes, have you put action into change? What did it do for you? Or if you heard them before, and one of the things maybe, Blair, that's not here, what happens if you've heard them before and you really haven't taken them to heart, and maybe you've experienced something that you kind of wish you could go back and change again? You know what, the past only matters by what we bring forward from it that can help us move positively in the future. So, and then when you look at no, if you haven't heard them, great. Look at the wisdom or the depth that's there, and trust that these are not just being made up out of something to discuss for a few minutes, but actually from wisdom of traders who have been around in all different markets in quite a few ways. They've gone through the ups and the downs, and they're trying to share some of their wisdom with you guys. So I just wanted to make sure, and then probably the most important thing there, Blair, is the bottom, is the action step that you take. Because I can honestly, transparently, looking through my camera to the hundreds of students that will see this topical webinar, I'm saying that the 3 things that Blair is going to go into depth with you absolutely impact my trading success. They help me manage the elements when they don't go well, and they help me structure a plan that I can repeat on a consistent basis. And that's something that's really improved my trading. So just wanted to set this background that these are really important. And Blair and I love spending a few minutes with you, but we want you to be able to take that action forward after this topical workshop.
100%. And I mean, it's interesting to note that part of Ross's point is to say, you know, we're going to get information today, and when we want to help you know how to put that into place, right? How to put that into your trading. And one of the main things that coaches have said from their history is, oh, gee, I heard a bunch of stuff in the beginning, but I just didn't put that into place, right? I didn't put that into practice. And that's one of the things I would do a better job at. Now, you're hearing a lot of stuff from us, right? If you're connected to us, if you're in one of our memberships, example, right? There's people on here that are in the memberships. There's people here that aren't. You get a lot of material in those, right? You get a lot of material. One of the jobs of the coaches is to help you navigate that. Why do I bring that up? Well, because I know you're not going to remember everything. You're not going to implement everything. That's why you have it on an ongoing basis, right? That's why you have continual support. But to take something that you know you could do, you know you have heard, and say, all right, but that piece, that I've got a grasp of, I just haven't implemented that yet, right? And I would say there's going to be some things today as well that you maybe have not heard, or you haven't heard it in the way that we're going to share it. So then that is a unique opportunity for you as a trader to say, okay, I could take that. And remember, I'll say this last thing, we'll move on. One piece, guys, one piece of what we say today could be the game changer for you. It might be one thing that causes your mindset to click. It might be one thing in the skill set. I was doing a broadcast on Monday night, And somebody commented and said, oh my goodness, I completely forgot about that one thing. We were paper trading. They said, that is genius. I thought, well, somebody taught me that, so, right? I think it is genius, but it's not that I came up with it. One thing. Get a hold of that for a second right now. Like, there is one thing. This isn't just hype, right? Why is that not feasible? Why is that not logical? Why is that not reasonable? That one thing added to your trading could make a tremendous difference. Okay, so I hope you have lots of expectation for that. Moving on, what are the keys? Remember I said we're going to narrow them down. Well, here's what we're going to narrow them down to. Number one, position size, which was the number one we talked about last time, right? Everybody gave us this. And we also mentioned, I had an interview with Dr. Jim, one of the specialists on options over at Tastyworks. This was his number one as well, position size. In fact, I know Tom Sosnoff would say the same thing, right? Trade small. I've heard it right out of his lips. Trade small, trade small. So position size, number one, right? And of course, I've got the note there. So let's also define and eliminate some confusion, because I could say position size, it's a bit general. What does that mean, right? Keep it small. We can just say that and sign off, right? Keep it small. Well, what does that mean? When I go to make a trade today, right? S&P goes down, hits the 50-day, starts to bounce up, and I'm looking at a stock, but the market's really negative. I want to take some action here, but what should I do? I'll go a smaller position size. I hear the coaches say that a lot, but what does that mean for me? I want to cover that with you today. Number two, this was the second most common answer, right? I went through the results. I would have recognized that it's not about a single trade. It's about results over time. Okay. I'm not going to go into a lot of mindset stuff today. You guys have heard me do that. There's some here because the coaches talked about the importance of mindset. So this isn't really a mindset piece entirely, but in part, it's just thinking about my trading over time. I'm going to go into that a little bit. Number three, the value of my trading plan, right? Practical, mental, and I want to hit a few aspects of that practically today as well, right? Value of my trading plan. Just think about that for a sec, everybody, before I move on, right? Where are you at in these three areas? If 6, 7 even traders of varying experience, right? We've got people on here in different levels of experience, wherever they are, we're talking seasoned decade pros, decades, okay, on down. These are the top three things. Remember, the Bible says, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate them. Now, talking spiritually in that sense, right? But it's the same principle. So these are important. These are important, okay? Section 1. Keep moving here. As I said, this is the number one. So that's the exact same heading there, right? 2 factors to consider here. Okay. Stop me anytime, Ross, if we got questions, because I'm going to keep moving fairly quickly here, guys. We could do this for 2 hours. It would be easy. I promise you. 2 factors, position size and risk. We say, well, wait a second. Isn't number one, didn't you say it was position size? Yes, but I want you to consider 2 things. Okay. Because there really is 2 numbers. What's the risk I have in a trade? Well, you'll hear a student say it's your stop out, which is true, right? You set a stop out. That's ultimately the risk. When I calculate risk return in a trade, I'm looking at buy point minus stop out, right? How much am I going to risk if I stop this thing out versus how much could I make if it goes to target? So that's risk. Okay. But there's also, how big is my position? How much money have I put into the trade as a whole? We have to recognize that there's 2 essential ways to define risk there, okay? And even though we go to the stop out and we call that our risk in the trade, we're still looking at a position size. How much money am I going to put in a whole position? Okay, so I define a couple of points on that. Okay, so what risk return are you okay with? Okay, do you always look at that? I'm not going to go deep into risk return here, but I'd highlight we always want to look at that, right? This helps with position size too. I just mentioned market tone. How clear is market tone to you? I don't have this in the notes, but I'll say this really quick. The more I do market tone, the more I realize, I've said this to you guys before, it's not binary. It's not red and green light. Market tone is how much risk would I take in the market right now? If it's more clear to me, then I'm willing to take more risk. If it's less clear to me, then I'm not willing to take more risk. Identifying a position size, which is the next point. What's a full position size for you? Right? What does that look like when it's less clear in the market? Then I'm going half, quarter of my full position size. But if I don't have a full position size, then I don't have a baseline to start from. Okay, but this gives me flexibility in my trading. Okay, but it's also strategy specific. Okay, so we have programs, right, where we're going to teach you each strategy. We have community pages where we highlight and focus on and coach each strategy. Now, you don't have to be doing them all at the same time, right? We're going to break this down for you, but we have the support there for each level. So we can really go into this for you and help you discover what this would be, but you're going to want to know that. You're going to want to know what that is, and it's not going to be the same on every strategy. Okay, continuing on. Here's some obvious, right? Here's some takeaways. If you can't stop checking your stock, right? Let's say this isn't the first stock trade you've done, because you might just be checking it because it's the first one you've done, which we don't recommend doing, by the way. I did it. You will probably do it in your first trade, but it's better not to, right? It just stokes the emotions. But that said, if you can't stop checking the trade, can't stop looking at it, can't stop thinking about it, can't sleep, it's way too big. It's too big, right? Yeah, you could argue some exceptions here, but by and large, if that's the case, there's a very good chance that whatever you've put into that position is just too big. It's too big for your confidence level. It's too big for maybe your skill level at that point, and it's probably just too big for your account. And there's no shame in that, right? This is something the coaches are saying, right? These are experienced traders going, oh, I wouldn't trade so big. You say, oh, I thought once you got experience, you'd trade like huge. Well, it might be huge to you. It might not. I don't know. But in proportion to their account and the risk they like to take over time, no, it's not huge. They would trade smaller. Well, wait, if I trade smaller, doesn't that mean that I don't win huge? Well, it depends on how you look at it, right? But taking too much risk in the beginning is a common mistake for new traders. And these coaches are saying, yeah, I would have heeded that warning, right? I would have heeded that warning. I would have thought process before profit. Okay, I got to keep moving here, but I say this a lot, and I know sometimes people think, Blair, nobody said this specifically, but we could make the conclusion, is this really about winning big? Are we going to make money? Are we going to win? Well, that's, of course, that's the potential here. That's what we do. That's what this is all about. But the path to consistency is a little bit more of a narrow road, right? It's not the wide path. It's not the obvious way. It's the narrow road. Well, what does that mean? Well, here's a good example. We don't trade huge, right? We want to trade within our risk. So if you are getting emotionally triggered at an extreme level, it's probably too big, okay? Moving on. Ask yourself, if I did have a catastrophic loss, right? Not just my stop out, but my whole position, how many trades could my account last? Now, we don't expect anybody, because if you have a skill set, which, by the way, if you don't, we're going to want to get you into one of our programs, right? You're going to want to learn how to actually implement this with a coach. Now, that said, if you did have a catastrophic loss, meaning you lost most or all of your position in any given trade, which again, you don't have to do. We can teach you how to avoid that. But if you did, is that your whole account? Is it gone? What if you had that happen twice, or even 3 times, or maybe 7 times, or 10 times, right? Then the whole account is gone. Well, what we want to help teach you how to do and work with you. Now, we work with individuals on this, okay? Some of this is specific to the trader, right? This is something we're going to do in one of our memberships, but you would want to know, well, what's a good position size for me, okay? So this is a starting point for you to say, oh, I need to think about that. I need to think about risk in this respect, okay? Because position size is important, and the coaches have said, ooh, yeah, I'd have traded smaller. I'd have traded smaller, especially while I was learning, right? If I trade huge while I'm learning, Jeffrey says this all the time, and I'm going to move on from this section. We ought to trade better before we trade bigger. What do you think many new students do, right? They flip it. They trade big as they're trying to get better. In fact, in some cases, if there's losses, we might be tempted to say, I got to make that back. And then we take an even bigger position. Now, I know not everybody does that, but somebody out there did it. Pretty sure I've done it. As your confidence in market tone fluctuates, I mentioned this, right? You can consider adjusting the position size. See, now you have a baseline to move from, right? Many details. This is why I said coaching. By the way, I'm going to say this right now because I've mentioned coaching a couple of times. We're going to put some links in the chat. We'll talk about it a little bit as we move through the webinar. It's, as I mentioned, my favorite time of year, and I'm not being goofy. It really is my favorite time of year. I love Thanksgiving, I love Christmas, and I love when the cold weather comes, whether I'm in California or Texas. That means turkey, that means Thanksgiving, and of course, that means Black Friday. We do have a Black Friday deal. Okay, I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, but our memberships, you can get 6 months by paying for only 4 months. You can get 2 months free into our memberships. It's also the 30th of November, right? 30th of November, meaning the memberships are changing, okay? Right now, you get all that coaching support I talked about, but you also get the courses. You get the actual courses, learning to trade options, learning to trade credit spreads, right? We're teaching you these. That's still included in the memberships. Guess what? Tomorrow, that's not going to be in the memberships anymore. The price is also going to change. What does that mean? It means today is an enormously important day if you're thinking about getting into TRADEway, okay? Because you are going to have access to the courses. You're going to get the best setup price. You're going to get the best monthly price. You can jump into membership. You can see what I'm talking about. We can prove to you that it is as awesome as we say it is, and you can cancel anytime. But you get in on the ground floor now and you get all those benefits. Also, there's a little rumor going around that we might have our own charting software launching. If you're in a membership, you actually get a discount on those charts as well. Now, I know that's a lot, but it's important. And today's the very last day that you can do that. Everything changes tomorrow. So the links are in there. I know Katie and Misty and some others are answering questions in the back. I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but I figure I mentioned it a couple times, so I better say that, okay? Let's keep moving here. Number 2, I would have recognized that what is it? My trading results, right? What's important in my trading? It is never about a single trade. It's about results over time. Okay, it's about results over time. This is important. Let's untie this a little bit. Here's the first thing I would say. This kind of connects to our first section where Ross and I were talking about just asking ourselves healthy questions as we move through this. And that's not detached from where we are right now, right? That's why I said take a screenshot, because I want you to think about those questions once we're done here. But do something to your trading plan, right? Something in the space you're in, a little sticky note. Right, I used to have 2 sticky notes right beside my trackpad here on my computer that reminded me, it was a scripture, right? The plans of the diligent lead surely to, and it goes on, right? So I wanted to be diligent in my trading plan. put something in that space that you trade in, which was my point, right? To remind you that trading is never about the single trade you're in. It's not about the single trade I'm in. It's about my results over time. Okay. I am convinced, this is an important statement, that trading maturity can only be measured over time. Anybody can lose in the short. Anybody can win in the short term, right? It happens. That might be a result of skills. That might just be a result of a random distribution of wins and losses, which the market does. That's how it works. Okay. Short stints don't tell us what we need to know, positively or negatively, right? Results over time reveals maturity. If that's true, right, then you can see how this coach came to this realization. The reality that acting on my plan is drastically more valuable than the result of any single trade occurrence, right? If we focus in on one trade, like that trade is the be all end all. Now, I'm being a little dramatic for effect, but emotionally it can feel more so like one trade, one single trade is really, really important. And we've got to win, right? Well, what happens if we think like that? What happens if we think like that? Well, then it allows emotions to happen in a certain way, right? If I think about this trade is a link in a longer chain of maturity in my trading, and maturity in my trading should translate to results. That's the exciting part. It's not just some, abstract thing, right? We want results. We want accounts that are growing, right? We want accounts that are growing. So if I remember that, no, actually this trade is important. And what I do in this trade is important, but the reason that it's important is because it connects to the rest of my trading, right? This trade number 13 connects to the next 50 trades. And when I think like that, it can lower the emotions in that trade, right? In a specific way. Let's look at this. It helps us embrace what? Good decision making. How so? Because if this trade that I'm in that's maybe going down, right? I'm about to stop out. If my whole trading career comes down to this one trade, you think I'm going to want to stop that out? You think there's going to be more resistance to stop out mentally or emotionally? Of course there will be. But if you remember, oh no, over 50 trades, I'm going to have a random distribution of wins and losses. But I know that this is just one of those 50. So not only does that make it less high stakes to stop out, right? Which is a good thing. Less emotions. That's great. But it also empowers me to go, you know what? If I manage this well and do what I said I was going to do, then I keep myself on track for those 50 trades. Super important. Super important. And we can shift into this without even realizing it, where we say, this one trade, man, we just kind of get enveloped in it, right? And it's helpful to remind ourselves, this is part of a sample size. This is part of a set. This is part of a series, whatever word you want to use, right? Example I just gave, taking the stop out may not seem fun for that trade. Of course, nobody likes doing that, right? But it serves our overall results tremendously. If we think about how good actions in one trade serve maturity over the long term, take some of the emotions out of a single trade, and helps us stay on track. How did we do that? All we had to do was think about results over time. Because if you have an edge, I'll say this last thing, if you do have an edge, if you're implementing the system and you're getting an edge, okay, it doesn't mean you're doing everything perfect, but you're getting an edge, then that means you're going to get ahead over time. Otherwise, there's not an edge present. And that means you're going to get some wins and you're going to get some losses. Okay. I don't know what the distribution of those is going to be, and neither do you. And that's the point, right? When a loss comes, by the way, for those of you who have not heard us say this before, the absolute greatest, most profitable, wealthy trader in the world takes losses. So consider that. You have to take losses as a trader. We just want to control them. We want to control them and not let them be bigger than they're supposed to be. This is one of the ways that we do this. The last sentence there, knowing that this is a string of trades helps us accept losses. Okay, so that's really important, really important. Lastly, as the coach just stated, if we shoot for higher probability base hits, meaning I'm not trying to hit a home run every time. I'm not trying to get max profit every single time. I had a paper trade on Netflix posted to our membership site, Insider Plus. I post patterns on there every week. We did a paper trade on Netflix, okay? And I set a target that wasn't max target, right? I show you guys how to find points along the way that if the stock doesn't go all the way to the max target that you would look for in that pattern, but maybe halfway or 65% of the way, right? Which could still be a great position. And if it hits that point and begins to fail, I'm going to show you guys what to do so that you don't walk away with nothing in that particular trade. Now, this was just a paper trade I did, right? This wasn't a live trade that students did. But it serves an it serves as an example of, if I just look at how can I set this up for a higher probability where I don't need to hit a home run every time, it can tremendously help your trading. And in this particular trade on Netflix, that's exactly what it did. It went up about 2/3 of the way, hit our target, and turned around and fell and completely crumbled, right? But we had a reason to expect that, and we were able to do it because we weren't trying to milk it for 100%. That's a fallacy. That's something that a lot of new traders fall into. Again, getting access to the program, which is where I did that on the community pages, is in those memberships that I mentioned. These are very practical things for you to help your trading. Are you getting the results you want to get? If not, maybe it's time to get into a membership. I would say it is. You could try it out for a month, right? Students that get into those memberships, they stick around. They stick around. The students that get in the memberships and get involved get excited. They get excited. They get empowered, not just by us coaches, but they get to connect with other students. You're going to get access to the community, not just me, not just Ross, not just Jeffrey, and so on, but other students. In fact, my most popular posts are the ones that I post and then other students get involved in. That brings in tons of other students because I know you guys always like to hear from each other and you encourage one another probably more than we ever could. And that is a part of the community as well. So you get into those. Again, it's going to have more in it for less cost today than it will ever have again, right? Things are changing around TRADEway. And this is one of those things. Things are just getting better. And we're giving you guys that opportunity today. So don't miss out on that. Section 3. This is the third one. Remember I said there's going to be 3. The value of my trading plan. Okay, we've gone over the most basic trading plan, which I'm going to do in a second, as well as mentioned the workshop series, right? It's really the master class. We have a series of classes called the workshop series. And a big part of the design of that series is to really get you into the nitty-gritty of a trading plan. So if that's something you're hungry for, that's where we would do that. By the way, if you've looked at that link, Trader Pro has Workshop 1. So you get a part of the workshop series as I talk about a plan. It's just included in the membership. If I understand correctly, it's not going to be in there tomorrow, right? It's not going to be a part of that anymore. That's a huge thing. It's not just a random fact I'm throwing out in the webinar. It's actually a pretty big deal. I traveled with one of our coaches and did the workshops around the country for a year. So they're tremendously helpful. And here we are with point number 3, the value of my trading plan. So let's talk about that a little bit. I mentioned that I would say the most basic plan, right? Where's my buy point? Where's my sell point? Where's my stop out? Right? 3 numbers. That is the bare minimum, most basic trading plan. Okay. So we want to make sure we have that. I won't spend any more time on that right now. And what's the heart of that? Well, there's a few things, but mainly I would say you're going to have emotional control. When you know what you want to do before there's risk on the table, before emotions are heightened, you've already decided. So you're able to lean on that, right? You have made decisions in a more objective state so that you can lean on those decisions when you are in a less objective state. In other words, when I'm in the trade, I already know what I'm supposed to do, right? No matter what the stock is doing, I know what I'm supposed to do. And most coaches mention that as well. This is what I was just stating. Since I don't know what the market will do, let me set somebody free right now. Okay, making a bold statement. Let me set somebody free. You are never going to know what the market is going to do next. It's not going to happen. Now, you might feel like you did. You might have guessed correctly. You might have a skill set that says, what's most probable? That's what this is all about. But we don't actually know for sure. And the job of a trader is not to know for sure. The job of a trader is to know where the edge is and then manage your risk in that edge. That's the job of a trader. That's what we teach you how to do. In other words, your job is to know the best opportunities and then manage yourself well. That's the job of a trader. Since I don't know, circle, underline, highlight that word. Since I don't know what the market will do, I have to know what I'll do. And the plan tells me what I will do. And then it's your job and my job to actually stick to that when there's money on the line. That's how you become confident in your trading, right? Is the market going to fall? Is it going to break the 50-day today? I don't know. Is it going to bounce at the 50 days? Is it going to move all the way up? Don't know, right? We could discuss probabilities, and we'll do that in our programs, right? All the coaches post every morning and throughout the day on the community pages. This is what we see happening in the market. This is what we expect to see next. This is how we can prepare. If it goes up, I would prepare for this. If it goes down, I would prepare for this. We're teaching the skill set constantly, helping students, right? This is the back and forth that we do, but it's about knowing what we are going to do. And that's power. Now, when I talk to people who don't have a skill set, there's typically wondering, fear of missing out, some measure of anxiety. Why? Well, because they want to take advantage of the market movement, but they feel like they need to know what's going to happen. They don't have a skill set. You say, Blair, that's me. I don't have a skill set. Click on the link. Look at one of those memberships, right? Get yourself into a position where people who care about you and your success can help you get there. Okay, so let's keep moving here. Okay. The summary I just gave, the more I'm a part of TRADEway, the more I'm around students, the more I consider my own trading results, the more I think about this, the more I'm convinced. This, what I'm saying, is most, not all, but it's almost all of what trading is. You say, well, what do you mean? Having a plan, sticking to your plan, despite what the market does, that is such a huge part of trading. It cannot be overstated. If you watch us in Trader Pro, it's one of the memberships, Monday through Thursday, we're in the markets live. Last hour of the day, of the trading day, that is. We're in the markets live. I host those on Wednesdays. I help on Thursdays. Our other coaches are on there through the week. And students are sending us in tickers. We're getting live market feedback. We're looking at trades. Sometimes students are looking to get in that trade. Sometimes they're already in the trade. It's tremendous help, right? This is hands-on stuff that we're doing with our students. I find that different students are looking at different things, different risks, different patterns, different strategies. But the thing that ties it all together is, as long as that student tells me that they know why they're taking that trade and they have a solid plan, then they are 90% on track despite what I see on the chart. Okay, there are some patterns and stocks, trades that I like a lot more than others, right? And we help you sharpen that skill for sure. Let's eliminate the crummy trades, right? Let's sharpen the skills. But that piece is so huge, you guys, so huge. And I'm hammering on this because this is a big one. Having an objective plan that structures the edge, follows it to a T. Say, well, what do you mean by edge? That's the TRADEway system. That's the TRADEway system. And that's the system we want to teach you. You get into one of those memberships, you're going to have access to not only the coaching support, but the courses that are included in that membership. So that's what I mean by edge. Consider this. I don't like to focus on the negative, but I'll say this just quickly. Almost all of the consistent and long-term struggle that I see, it doesn't exist in a misunderstanding of that system. Like, is this system hard to learn? No, it's really not hard to learn. Maybe some pieces are harder than others, as you go along. That's different for every person. That's true of me. But when I have the support and the courses, it's not hard. I can get through it. I can get understanding because I have human beings to talk to help me get it, right? The consistent and long-term struggle, if it exists for a student, that's not true of every student, but if it does exist, I see it in the inability, right? Or the unwillingness to capture the benefits of this approach. What does that mean? Planning and sticking to it. Choosing process and letting that produce profit, right? That's the potential of it. Good process. Good process. Okay. If we're not doing that and we're still not seeing the results we want, we've got to change something. Trust me. Trust me. I have tested this to the max. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Right? I can be a very stubborn man. Maybe you're not like me. But if you are, I promise you, the market's not going to change for us. So this is a really important piece. In other words, making the plan and then gaining the authority, the trust with yourself, right? To be a trader who follows that plan consistently. Okay, we're getting into the home stretch here. This is the last slide. Just going over some things, right? Position sizes. I'm just recapping a little bit here. I want you guys to get this. Personal risk tolerance, account size, strategy. That's something we do in those memberships, right? You want to answer some of those questions, right? Let us work with you on that. How am I going to track this over time? I haven't said a lot about Charts by TRADEway, which launches tomorrow. But here's one of the coolest things about Charts by TRADEway, which is our own charting software that we're launching, by the way. If you're in one of these memberships, you do get a discount on Charts by TRADEway. It's our own charting software. You're going to see us coaches using only this from now on. If you trade using our charts, we can show you how it will automatically journal your trades. Now, you don't have to do this, right? You can keep this private. But if you wanted to, you could give, say, me access. And I would be able to see your trades, paper trades, real trades, again, entirely up to you. But if you wanted me to, you could. I would be able to see that. Not only that, but you are going to have access to an incredible journaling system built for traders. This isn't just a spreadsheet, right? This is a very, very cool tool inside Charts by TRADEway that is going to help you track. I see that I put how am I gong. That, for those of you out there, that literally drives me a little crazy as I literally went over this. That is such a side note, but it does drive me crazy. That said, this journaling system is included and you can really get a deep dive on how am I really doing? Sometimes we can't make meaningful adjustments to get where we want to go, our goals, because we just don't have the data to show us where we've been. I have this Fitbit. I bought this to track my sleep. This is a very easy example. You know what? And I found when I looked at how much I was actually sleeping and when I was going to bed, I thought I was going to bed way, way more consistently than I thought I was. I just didn't have the data. Once I had the data, it was like, wow, cold water in the face. I know exactly what I need to adjust. These charts by TRADEway journals can be the same thing. What if that's the one thing? What if that's the difference that you need to get from where you are to the results you really want in your trading? Maybe just the next level, right? If that's true, if that's even possible for you, then I would say it's worth considering making that upgrade, okay? Do I tend to struggle to stick to a plan? Bring a coach into that process. I've talked about coaches a lot right there in those memberships. This is a great reason to have access. People private message me on community pages all the time. You can just send me a direct message, screenshots. Hey, Blair, I'm struggling with this. I'm looking at this trade. I'm doing this. Please give me your feedback. I get those messages all the time. Sometimes they're on the community page where other students can see if that's what the student wants. Sometimes it's a direct message. It's private. You could do it either way. Sometimes it's both, right? If you could have somebody who's further along than you are help you, could you get where you want to go faster? You ought to ask yourself that question, right? And I'm not being silly, right? I mean, the obvious answer is, well, yeah, but it's a good question to ask. And that's really what this is designed to do for you guys.